SeizYourBusiness.com podcast with Tony Rourke and Kevin O'Flaherty.
SeizYourBusiness.com, making you money. Share it on Facebook, share it on LinkedIn, Twitter, our blog, YouTube video. Listen to our podcast, getting so hot that it's burning up the stereo. Welcome to the SeizYourBusiness.com podcast. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law. I'm joined today by my co-host, E.J. Johnson from Liliana Properties.
Yes, I'm here.
And our guest today is Chris Johnson. He's the CEO of Tivoli Enterprises, Inc. And our topic today is going to be surviving in tough economic times. So, Chris, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Tell me what Tivoli Enterprises, Inc. is and what kind of history of the company is.
So the company was actually formed in 1978 by my dad, and originally it was a real estate holding company that was just to do commercial real estate and have tenants and improve properties and make money that way. Actually, I think it was 1977. I apologize. And then in 1978, he had the Tivoli Theater here in Downers Grove, where the tenant who had a lease through 92 just all of a sudden put a close for remodeling sign on the marquee and tried to load up a truck with stuff that didn't belong to him and was going to skip town and all that good stuff.
Getting out.
Long story short, that after the then manager, Ed Doherty, he kind of tipped off, said, hey, these guys are running. Said, hey, I know how to run a theater. I don't know how to do the business stuff, but I can run the theater if you're interested. And so they interviewed other prospective tenants, that operated theaters, and they were a little bit shady. And so ultimately decided to get into the business. And then with that single screen, reopened it in August of 78. And then continued on from there.
The Tivoli Theater, that's been around for a long time.
Yes, yeah. A few years before my time. No, it was 1928. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So Christmas Day, 1928, opened. There's sellouts and everything. But, so, I mean, it's been around for a long time. And so then I came into the picture shortly thereafter. I got the fine job of cleaning out the basement. My dad gave me he gave the job to my brother for $3 an hour to clean out the basement, and he quit the first day. I was his helper, and so then I ran it, and everybody kept quitting because it was kind of awful work. You had this stuff from like the 50s that was molding in the basement, and anyways, I in 3 weeks I cleaned it all out, and all the old seats and everything in the basement, and got into it. And then he still had one theater in early 1980. I became an usher at the theater, and then
you gradually worked up.
Yeah, exactly. So then in '84, I started managing theaters, and we still in '84 we had a couple more theaters, but I was running around. We were still very, very small, and just a couple of downtown theaters. And then '85, I moved to the office and started doing the corporate stuff. But we were still, single screen, single theater when I got into it. We got all the way up to presently we have 104 screens in 13 locations.
Oh wow!
The Tivoli is actually our only one screen, but most of them are first run, theaters. Like we have an 18-plex and that kind of stuff. But anyways, so at one point during the in the late 90s, we were up to 20 locations with 90 screens, and so we had worked up, and then there was a little turbulence in the business environment. But going back to Tivoli Enterprises, the reason it's called Tivoli Enterprises because Tivoli was the first theater, and it was all based on the Tivoli building.
Okay.
And we did take over the bowling alley, took over the hotel, and then we also had done some commercial real estate in the early 90s. We bought four apartment buildings in Joliet, and we rehabbed. It was 100 and now I forget, but it was over 100 units. It was a big complex, and ran that, and we also have like 100 commercial tenants at various buildings and stuff that are related. related to theaters and otherwise, but our primary, 95% of our revenues are from movie theaters, and that's kind of where we've been. But we've had to sort of reinvent ourselves many times along the way, to survive. Some of that had to do with we originally were just a bargain theater, but then, and when I started in the business, there was no such thing as video rental. That didn't even exist. So it used to be that they'd bring the movies back, so it's like, it's a slow week. Let's bring back Raiders of the Lost Ark, and for the 100th time. But then
you're bringing back Billy Madison.
Oh yeah.
I saw that on your sign today.
It's its 20-year anniversary. So so back when Adam Sandler was making some real quality films.
Well, relative to the ones he's making.
It's very true. Very true.
Actually, I'm an Adam Sandler fan, but I have to say he's testing me a little bit. Although I did kind of like Pixels. I know I have a soft.
You saw Pixels. I guess you own the movie.
I have a.
Yeah, I'm sure I was about to see that.
I have a soft spot in my heart for. For old video games, because I kind of, grew up in the arcade environment and that sort of thing. So, but anyway, so we basically, we started off as single screen bargain theaters, $1.50, $1.25. And then once the video rentals sort of came in, the writing was kind of on the wall that, hey, you need to get more screens per location so you can show a wider range of film. And you also need to, transition into the first run movies so that there's more to be made, and you're not sort of caught in the middle between the video and in the first run. So we've done many things along the way to sort of keep with the times, or sometimes even become trailblazers and do things to have longevity and to thrive. But there's definitely been some times that that have been tough along the way, and we've I think we'll go into those. But
I'm hearing your story about how you started with one theater in 1978, and now you're a real estate mogul. Pondering a presidential run. But it's interesting to me is it sounds like there have been some bumps and bruises along the way, and people look and say, "Wow, that guy must have gotten lucky," or that guy must have, what happened to make that work? Yeah. But I bet it was a lot of hard work. And,
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, how did it work out that? Because your parents still technically work there, right?
Yeah. So
they just said, "Here's the range. You're good." I mean,
So, candidly, well, first, it is my dad and my stepmom.
Yes.
Very true. They were divorced in the early 70s, so I was a young kid. But no, they did a great job, and I think along the way, they realized that I was a bit of an asset, and I think it was in the early to mid 90s when we were thinking about, this is going well, let's go public. And so I said, we don't know anything about going public.
Yeah.
So I went back to grad school, and then that was in late 95. I went back to grad school for finance, and I realized that not only are we not going to go public, but our industry is in big trouble. And it was dumb luck that I was there and were able to make some decisions that ultimately kept us alive and actually sort of made us much better than if we hadn't gone through that. And so it's kind of funny that I became sort of the real conservative guy. My dad was like, let's just do it, any project, that makes sense, let's do it. And I'm like, we got to make sure the numbers work, and we got to make sure we can pay for this, and all that. So I became kind of the the stereotypical old guy,
the conscientious.
Yeah. And but anyways, I think we did a few things, and I was able to bring us back on track, and a lot of the stuff that I had learned, I was able to apply to the business, and so there was more confidence, and we went from sort of real hard times to really good times, and so then I think over time he sort of gave up the reins on the money part. He hated dealing with bankers and any of that. I remember going to meetings, when I was younger, and the banker would talk to you for a good half hour, 45 minutes, and love you, and they're like, and at the end of it, well, we can't give you any money, they were, they just wanted to
all
do
that
their
talking
community,
you can't
it's
get
like
no money
rejection. So ultimately we, like I said, when I went through grad school, I kind of realized the talk and what you needed to do to present your case, and candidly, it is a little bit challenging especially in a family business, being the next generation, because you really kind of, and people should look at the next generation as, hey, they just got the job because they're the next generation. And I know I would if I was giving somebody money, but if they prove themselves, obviously, and they need to, that's important. So that's what I try to do is I always try to sort of earn, whatever I was doing. I'm sure people, some question that, but I can assure you that there were some tough decisions and things that we did along the way.
So tell me about the kind of the onset of the tough times, and then what you learned in school and how you applied what you learned to get yourself through those tough times.
Yeah, no. So there, so many things there. So in the sort of internet age, when you put a .com on your name and you were making all sorts of money, there was just, Wall Street was just crazy looking for the next thing, and there was all sorts of sort of cash out there. And for somebody somewhere decided that they would, or they classified theaters. This was in the mid to late 90s. It's sort of a growth industry, and we're just loaning money kind of willy nilly. Hey, you're building a theater, great. Here's a lot of money. And so they weren't. The due diligence really wasn't there. And anyways, so all sorts of people were expanding, and even if you weren't expanding, we were doing some expanding, but if somebody built next to you, it could be devastating. So long story short, I remember the best line ever. My dad came to me and he's asking me, why can't we build this theater? Why can't we do this? And I'm like, and he's like, everybody else is. I don't understand why we can't. I go, I don't know how everybody else is, but I can tell you this doesn't make any sense. And we started analyzing, and it didn't make any sense. And ultimately, there was all sorts of bankruptcy, and pretty much everybody, all the top chains went bankrupt or very, very close. And there was this mess on our hands, and what we did, we were funding a lot of our expansion out of cash flow. And I went to the banker, and I had a heart-to-heart with the banker. And one of the things, stepping back, that I realized, you need to know cash flow is king. So you can be a profitable company that goes out of business real quickly. If you don't have the cash, you can't be in business. So I kept this chart of what our current balance was, all our liquid assets, and then what our obligations were. And so we were a business that had, we collected money, and then we got to pay the vendors later, so because everybody was paying basically cash. Yeah. So I remember the peak of our problem, I had $6,000 total in the bank, and actually that was the week before. I still have the record. There's nothing in this next week, and it was close to $2 million in liabilities, current liabilities. Like 30-day liabilities.
Wow.
And it was, this was going to be it. We were in big trouble. So we had a Saturday meeting, brought in the bookkeeper, and it was my dad and I and the bookkeeper, and we decided what we were going to do. And we were going to write letters to all of our vendors and say, look, we are going to get through this. We know how, what we can do. And we're going to pay you and make good on anything. We hope that you're with us. And we'll go from there. And then what happened was we eliminated everything. Like, we used to get our cars washed, once a week, and we'd get magazine subscription. So even though, a car wash isn't that much, magazine isn't that much, we canceled everything.
We can't afford that.
Yeah, we used to go, like, we used to do these monthly luncheons. It was done. Everything was done. It was just bare bones. And then the vendors that we absolutely 100% had to pay, this is where I had a heart-to-heart with my wife. I said, because I was controlling the money at that point, and I said, hey, actually, my wife was pregnant, and
Yeah, so
my
you got a
daughter-
baby on
It
the
always
way.
happens that
it
way.
was,
with
Yeah,
it.
and
kid
I
on
said,
the way.
hey, you know what? I said, we're gonna have to go, on credit cards and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And the great news at that point, they were giving 0% interest on anything forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of credit line on that. So I probably stacked up 100 or 200,000 on credit cards,
Oh man.
and was paying the bills, and
On the credit cards.
on the credit cards. And at this point, obviously, I'm losing my house, I'm losing everything, but I was like, she said, are you sure about, I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel pretty good about it. I think we can make it. And then, so we did that. But then we also went to our lead banker and we said, look, here's the issue. We had been funding our expansion out of cash flow. And we should have done two things. We should have, well, we needed to do two things. One, forget any expansion. We got to consider ourselves a cash cow and just, let the business bring us the money in and work towards, paying, getting ourselves in the right place. The other part is taking appropriate debt, and paying off those short-term liabilities and using our long-term assets, which were our buildings that we owned, using those to fund, that good debt idea, and then move forward that way. So that was like kind of a tipping point, and the banker shockingly gave us the money and believed in what we were saying. And candidly, part of it was because I laid everything out, all the pro formas, all the past, where the problem was, how we could do it. We gave them a decent rate of interest. Candidly, they could ask for anything. We would have said, yeah, okay, whatever, to a point. I shouldn't say that. But anyway, so we did that. And then we looked at opportunities that made sense. How do we sit there and we had a market where we had this 7-screen beautiful theater. We just spent $5 million renovating it, and the competition came in and built an 18-screen theater, not even a mile away. I mean, it literally was. I could hit a golf ball, and I stink at golf, and I could hit a golf ball and hit that theater. And they came in. This was the largest theater company, Regal, and they came in and built an 18-plex. And so we were both losing money. That one location was losing $750,000 a year. They were losing money, and ultimately we got the loan. We got back on track. They were in big trouble. They were going bankrupt. They weren't doing the business they thought. The landlord approached us and said, "Hey, would you close the theater you just spent $5 million doing? And will you come over here?" And we worked out a deal, and that was the start of like the biggest change. And then, I made a statement to my dad. I'm like, because we were losing money, I'm like, all right, we're going to make $1 million next year, and then the year after, we are going to, we're going to go from there. We're going to have a reserve in the bank, and this will never happen again. And some of it, I guess, was a little bravado. Some of it was like, hey, I see this working, and it actually did work out. But the lesson that I took away from the whole time was, number one, I know like all the people that lived through the depression, and I'm not trying to say that this was depression.
It was depression.
But why they put the cans of food on the shelf and all that, because they don't want to go through that again. And the same thing is, I wanted to have the money in the bank in case something happened. It gives you flexibility. So while you can make, you can obviously taking debt and if if your cost of capital is 3%, you can make 10%. Great, it's all good. But then the second that return isn't there, then you're in big trouble. So my point is, make sure that you have the appropriate debt. The debt levels don't get out of hand, so that you can have cash and have the right cash flow. So I would say to anybody who's study your cash flow, make sure the cash flow works. It's king. And profit, because profit is based on non-cash entries like depreciation and stuff like that. So you can have a year where you make all sorts of cash and you generate all sorts of cash and you lose money, or vice versa. You make all sorts of money and you don't have any cash. So watch your cash. That's the profit and loss is just one part of the picture. So, I always say, you got to know your balance sheet, your cash flow statement, and your income statement. But the other thing that we did was we also did less sort of back of the envelope, gut check decisions, because it used to be we'd redo a theater for a couple $100,000 or whatever, and it was all good. Now everything started becoming with millions in it, and when it's millions, you got to make sure it's going to work, because you get one bad project, especially when you're smaller, it'll devastate you. And the last part that we did during this whole thing is we were up to 20 theaters, 20 locations. We closed 8 of them, and one of the worst things you can do in business is have this emotional attachment. You gave life to this business, and nobody wants to say, "Hey, I'm a failure," and it doesn't make sense. You keep wanting to make it work. Well, if it's not going to work, get out of there. And the best thing we ever did was, we got rid of these 8 theaters, and we had these 12 profitable theaters, and it was like, oh, this is great. And so we applied that to a lot of other examples as well. We had a liquor store because we own this building, and we kept trying to make it work. And we realized this business sucks. And so it wasn't working. We closed it down and we rented it out. And now it's all rented out. We make money on it. We make more money than we ever made as a liquor store. And it wasn't something we knew anything about. So we got out of that. Or apartments. We rehabbed all the apartments, and we used to struggle. Wow, how do we get the vacancy up? How do we do all this? And we sold the apartments, and we focused on what we knew. And, I think every business goes through that, where they really focus on their core product, and then they're like, oh, we should diversify. So we cover ourselves, and then they focus and they diversify. And I'm a big fan of focus, just because, there's a lot of people with a lot of expertise, and the only way you're going to survive is if you're on your game. And so get rid of the dead wood. Don't be, it's really, it's kind of like, if you've ever been in a business where there's that one person working there that absolutely is horrible and brings the office morale down, and they're toxic, they should have been gone like a year ago. Mm-hmm. The second you let them go, everybody's like, wow, this is great. And so my point is, do what make that decision earlier. You got that dog of a business. If you can do this and that and it's going to be great, then do it. But otherwise, get rid of it. Move on. There's this concept of sunk cost that, it's like the guy at the gambling table. Well, I've already got $1,000 here. I got to get my money back. That money's gone. It's sunk. There's nothing you can do to get that money back. So walk away, take your lumps, and start over. And I
leave
think
while you can.
Leave while you can, right? And we've been in that situation where we've just done that, and I think we've now learned from it where, hey, if it isn't working, you've given it the old college try, and you've done this and that, just walk away. Do what you should have an exit plan in every business or every location or whatever. Not to say that's what you want to do, but how can you remove yourself from a bad situation? And that's what we did. We kind of cleansed ourselves, and then the new economy kind of tanked, the internet, bubble, and everybody started going to the movies, and then we would look like heroes. So it kind of looks like, oh yeah, you just print money over there. It's like, no, I could tell you about a time when I wasn't sure I could pay any bill.
I was living off of credit cards.
Yeah. And that was, we were juggling. So I guess my point is, know your numbers, and that happened recently too. We wanted to redo this one theater and add, and the numbers just weren't working. And, there was, on paper, you really wanted to redo it, and it was marginal. And actually, I got kind of convinced, and now it's sort of it's a neutral project in that we're not making any more money than we were making before, and it's a feel good, but from a money standpoint, I call that community service.
Yeah,
see, that's my thing. When I
help the community.
Yeah, when I have a business that makes no money, I call that community service. And we do a lot of community service, even at profitable theaters. But you need to make some money. You need to do it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of in making money. I mean, I don't live an extravagant lifestyle, and I pay taxes. I actually love to pay taxes, because that means, that I'm profitable. If I'm not paying any taxes, I'm in big trouble, because I'll be out. But my, going back, you don't fudge your projections. Don't do it just to sort of convince yourself or others that it's going to work or that it makes sense. And there's a lot of things that, if you just sort of stuck to a simple path, I love technology. There's another example. I love technology. I'll do technology. I can control everything off my phone. But sometimes we spend so much time making it so that we can control it off our phone or do that when you could do something like easy, like just put a check on a piece of paper or something. I guess you don't want to over-engineer stuff as well. So that's the other thing is, it's all cool if, everybody would like to have a Lamborghini and drive it around and be all that. But, that Ford Taurus is going to work just fine. And it's going to do what you need to do, get from here to there. Yeah. So that's kind of the other thing. So, but anyways, going back to that tough patch, it was a very tough patch. And we have had other instances where maybe there was a bad movie year and you start questioning yourself and then you're like, oh, what are we doing wrong? And I can't, what? You have to
put Adam Sandler up.
Yeah, that's exactly. But, so last year everybody was doom and gloom and your business is going to fail and there's no more theaters. And this year every movie's setting a record and, it's like, just last 2 weekends ago, Straight Outta Compton, biggest R-rated release ever.
Yeah, it came out really big.
And it came out late, August. And we had the Jurassic was the third best movie of all time. And we set all these records this year. So I go from that to last year. And now everybody's like, well, I don't know about 2016, and it's like, so people want to, when you're on top, they want to knock you down. And so you just got to know, hey, do I feel good with my business or not?
So basically what you're saying is you're gearing up for next year's getting knocked down.
Yeah. But there's some good things next year. But you need to look at the fundamentals because people ask me all the time, well, don't you think Netflix is going to kill you? And I'm like, no. I go, people still want to get out of the house.
Yeah.
I have 2 kids and and they're teenagers, but I like getting out of the house. And actually now I like going to the movie with them. My daughter is a little too cool for me, but when she lets me go out, it's fun. But the idea is people still go out to restaurants, they still go out to movies. They're going to go a lot of things you can do at home, but you want to get out sometime. And so in my business, I just need to take a look and say, all right, are the fundamentals still intact? Does this make sense? Even though people tell me that I'm going to go out of business. You have to take, you have to pause and think about it. It's just, I remember a few times bankers told me that nobody goes to the movies in the summers because his kids don't go to the movies in the summer. I'm like, well, I can only tell you historically, since the beginning of movies, summer is the biggest, time of the year.
Moms are not working.
Right.
Take their kids to the movies.
But there's no way I was going to convince this guy because his kids didn't go to the movies, or that's what he thought. And he was a banker and he knew my business better than I did. And I'm like, okay, I don't want your money, and it's been great talking to you. Good luck.
I'll go to the next bank.
Yeah, but I had 2 banks actually tell me that, and they were surprised. Oh, people really go to the movie in the summer? I'm like, yeah, all the time. I go, it's really simple. They go to the movies when the kids are out of school. I mean, that's your peak seasons are when people are not working. So, anyways.
So what really struck me is that you hit this crisis point where you had $6,000 in the bank,
$2
million,
in liabilities,
and you didn't. Sounds like you didn't panic too much. You sat down with your trusted people,
right?
Came up with a plan, and saw, hey, I see a path out of this. You came up with a path, mapped it out, and then trusted that path and went forward with it, even though you're putting yourself hundreds of thousands.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly.
That takes some fortitude.
It's tough. I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to laugh about and it's funny, I mean, it's funny. It's kind of
funny now that you've been through it.
It's like that whole thing, when you have that adversity, when you're in the heart of it, oh, it's awful. But when you look back, you're like, that's kind of.
I got through it.
Yeah, I got through it. Oh, that's not so bad. But yeah, I mean, it's but I think all those sports cliches and everything, it's or even life cliches that that it's the hard times that make you who you are, and I absolutely believe that. And probably sometimes maybe I'm a little too conservative and I get too, but it's just because, hey, I don't want to experience that again, and so you got to find a balance, and you also got to get that guns blazing guy too, that oh yeah, we can conquer the world, but there has to be something to back it up, so.
I know I want to be respectful of your time, but I got one burning question to ask you. So you scaled from 1 theater to 20, and you've got all these other projects going on. you can't scale your own personal time.
Right.
So what's like one or two tips for how to grow your business like that without being in multiple places at once and still make sure that you're providing, quality products?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I think actually that's probably a huge problem for small business, is how, do you control everything? And the answer is simple is you got to hire really good people and you got to trust. And, I got to have the best person working for me. And if I don't trust them, they're worthless. Yeah. So you hire trusted people that are, that are intelligent and that have your best interest in mind. Allow them to make mistakes. Allow them to make decisions, and believe in them. I mean, I have a goal actually. I've never taken 2 weeks off in a row, and I think I did when I got married. It was like 10 days or something, but that was a long time ago. And so my goal is I want to be able to take like a hiatus. I want to start with like a month or something sometime. But the point of that is I want to get the organization in such a,
that is
such
running
great
itself.
shape. It's running itself, just being that sort of, hey, I want to coach and have the trust and respect of the, of all of everybody who works for me and vendors and everybody that, hey, they're going to do a great job. And that's what it's about. And so right people, given the right tools and not trying to do everything. Actually, I think that's, if you try to do everything, you're going to make everybody angry because you're just going to, they're, what do they call them? Key holders. There actually was a company in our industry that a long time ago had a point of sale system. It was called IQ 0. And the theory behind it was that anybody with an IQ of 0 could run this. And it was really demoralizing, I mean, how, it's like, hey, hey, you're stupid. Yeah, you're stupid. And so, and we always say, we don't want key holders. We want people who, we're going to give them the keys, but they're going to make the business flourish. And so a lot of times I'll sort of throw it back. Well, what do you think? Cause it's easy to throw it to the boss and ask him what they, what they should do. And a lot of times I'll say, hey, you figure that out. I got my ideas, but I want to hear what yours are. And definitely, allow them to do that. The other thing I think is put systems in place. If you're running, if you start off anything like a restaurant, it's just booming and great. The hardest is always the second one. And how do you make it? So that the experience and the food and everything at that one restaurant is equal at the next one?
Right. And
so put systems in place and spend the time to put those systems in place, and then review those systems, and and also look at things. I mean, there is a lot of a lot of things that come up that that you would never think of. And for instance, I'm trying to think of when the ADA Act came into play in 1991, we had to restructure everything so that wheelchairs would come in, and that at first it was like, oh my God, this is going to take all sorts of money. But then in hindsight, it's like, wow, this is cool. We can, yes, it's a lot of money and things, but we can do, we can put in all this technology and change things so that now more people are coming in and viewing our product. So it was it was a shock because it cost us a lot of money, but at the same time, if you kind of open up, it was a well-intentioned law. It had some hardship, but fine, let's get past that and see how we can use it to better our business and be more part of the community. So we're confronted with a lot of things, a lot of times that whether they're laws or regulations and that, and everybody, feels like everybody's got their hand out, and then you say, well, now why are they doing this? And do we have this issue? And how can I address that better? And so I always try to take the perspective of why are they coming at me with this, why is somebody upset with something we do? And then we correct it, and like I had a person sue us for running commercials in front of the movie theater, and they were doing it. They were making an example out of, they sued Cineplex Odeon or Lowe's and us, believe it or not, in the whole United States. And I had to spend $60,000 in attorney's fees because I ran a 1.5-minute commercial on a movie, and they said, because you advertised the showtime at 7 and it started at 7:01:30, and I said, what? Anyways,
Wow.
I spent $60,000, and I was mad, because I had to spend this money, and ultimately there was no case there, and it was dropped and all that. But I said, okay, I get it. I don't like going to places and they say something's going to start at this time and it's a half an hour later.
Yeah.
I can tell you that One Direction started at 8:52 instead of 7 o'clock at the at Soldier Field because I picked up my daughter the other night. So I was like, hey, come on.
Well,
But
I mean,
anyway,
you go to shows like that and they're never punctual.
Right.
Oh, they're gonna be on at 7 and 9 o'clock. Hey,
Right.
I'm here.
Right. But the
Thank
point of it is, so I'm angry. But then I thought about it and I said, hey, you know what? We're going to put a policy in place. I get it. It's their dime. They don't want to see ads. They want to see, we're going to show some previews in the movie. So we made a policy after that all ads would end at showtime. So they couldn't trickle over. And I said, you know what? We can run any ad you want. I mean, that's, approved up to showtime. And then we go from there.
Okay.
But, it took me, I could be bitter and angry about that
It took you
$60,000.
$60,000
Right.
to learn that lesson.
But I think ultimately, I don't want to give the guy too much credit because I don't really care for the way he went about it. But you can take something bad, something that impacted you, and forgive them and learn from it. And that's always the little nuggets that I always say there's a bit of truth in everything, even if it seems outrageous, like the people, I came to the show and this bad thing happened. And it's like, okay, what really, happened? And you get to the bottom of it, you correct it, you move on. So I think that's important.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom with us.
That's awesome. That was awesome, dude.
It's been one of our best
episodes.
episodes.
It's been a great episode.
This is the normal place where we allow our guests to provide a call to action. If you want to reach me, here's my number.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't know how a movie mogul.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a website you want to give out.
Yeah, sure. Well,
Okay.
so two things. Our website is classiccinemas.com. So visit it if you want to go to the show. My email, don't try to sell me something, but if you want, because I do get solicitations daily.
That's hilarious.
My email is cjohnson@classiccinemas.com. But one last thing, if somebody sends in a comment and they're not happy with something, it's not unusual for me to pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, this is Chris Johnson. I'm the owner over at Classic Cinemas, and I want to make sure we're all good here. Yeah. And they're like, wait, now who are you? I said, well, I'm the CEO, and I run the place. They're like, why are you calling me? I said, well, because you didn't have a good time or something. And
we
they're
want
like,
to figure it out.
And then they're my best buddies, and and candidly, it's that kind of like they just appreciate the fact that you reach out to them. And I do believe that people send a lot of emails and post a lot of things that they don't think there's anybody on the other end. And then, and I read them all and I we take action. So that's something that we do. And I take that personally. And there are definitely others in the organization that probably do better job at that than I, but I will definitely take the time and hear anybody out. And I'm happy to discuss pretty much any topic. And I might not, ultimately get to where you're going, but at least we'll have a nice discussion. And normally there's a better outcome because of that. So feel free to email or whatever. Heck, I'll give you my direct line if you want to.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't been to the Tivoli Theater in downtown Downers, it's a different experience. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Inside.
Thank you.
It's kind of, you feel like you're going to see the Oscars or something. Old timey Hollywood.
You get all the free popcorn you want.
Yeah, right.
After you buy all the popcorn and drink.
Right.
Drink.
We do free refills on everything. And you know what? Again, we know that people are spending a lot on it, but let's make them feel good about it. You might not want that refill, but it's there if you need it. And likewise, and or giving a mint after the movie. One last thing, and I'll go too long, but I always think that you can tell how good a business is by the way they treat you when you're not exchanging money. So if they treat you well when you're not, there's no expectation of money changing. That's a good business. And so we try to live by that. We'll hand them a mint when they're leaving, say, hey, good night, give them an opportunity to correct any issue, or anywhere. But yeah, how do they treat you when they're not taking your money? And that's the true sort of barometer of a good business. But that's basically it.
That's
Thanks
awesome.
for your time, Chris. It's
Sure.
been an honor having you on.
Yeah,
it's
no,
been
I
great.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very
Thanks so
much. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks for bringing up your cool place here.